It was a slight change in plans. I had originally thought that at this point I would be with checking the knee on the granite surf or on the surface plate with the cylindrical square. I was pretty confident in how square I had the guiding way, but I wanted to, and then so the next step after that is to make sure that the guiding way actually contacts the column properly. So because you can't have, everything has to align together, both geometry, surface finish, and contact. So I thought what I would do instead was just verify that I have the geometry correct before I flip the column and start checking the angles of the two, of the guiding way and the column way. So at this point I've got the knee back on the column. I've got the 24-inch square set up. We've got a that's a tense indicator, and the plan is we've got it marked here on the square. I'm going to try and run 12 inches. I'm going to take the column down 12 inches. And see how well we did. So that's about 1 thou 4/10 over the 12. It's actually about 11 inches or so. So at this point I think that's close enough that I want to make sure that the other thing that happened too, when I changed the geometry on the guiding way, I lost the gib. So I got to redo the gib. But first I'm going to go back, put the knee on the column with the column on its back, and then start checking to make sure that I have good contact on the guiding way, and then got to do something with the gib, either a new gib or put a spacer in behind it for now, just so I can get this thing dialed in. But that's at least a 50% improvement. The spec actually calls out for less than 1 thou, so we're about 4/10 away from being in spec, but I'm trying for 0 here. So in an effort to make sure that I got the guiding way of the column running perpendicular to what will be the turret, and then the spindle, obviously, what I've done is I've got a cast iron surface plate, flips upside down on the surface that the turret is going to run on, and then the 24-inch square is clamped to that surface plate. And then what we're doing is this guiding way on the column is being checked against perpendicular, to make sure it's perpendicular to the top where the turret's going to go, which then will translate up to the spindle and the knee moving straight up and down with the spindle. So I've already kind of looked at it. I had to check an inside gib, or an inside way, actually I guess inside dovetail. I had to add a dowel to the gauge, which allows me to get inside of the dovetail. So I'm going to try and get it on camera, but pretty tight quarters in there. So that's the setup. Hard to hold that gauge in there, and the way I got the camera set up here, but it's running about a half a thou over 12 inches. So at this point I've got the column on its back again, and we've got the knee up on the column. We're going to check the contact between the two guiding ways, the knee and the column, at this point. I've got the blue on the column guiding way, and I'm trying to transfer it to the knee. Not what I was hoping for, but it's fixable. So as I was scraping to get the angle on the knee proper to take care of the perpendicularity issue, I've lost the contact on the guiding way. So it's high, which is taking the markings off the column in tight down at the bottom of the dovetail, which is something you have to watch for as you're scraping, right? It's easier to scrape out here on this edge because it's exposed, and it's harder to scrape down inside as you get down into the groove. So like I said, it's not what I was hoping for, but it's fixable, and shouldn't take too long to get that straightened out. At this point, now that we're getting very close on perpendicularity, we got to start watching all the other characteristics at the same time. So I've been able to get the geometry of the knee within about 5/10 both this way here and this way here, going up and down on the column. We've got a little bit of work left to do on the guiding way fit between the knee and the column. So everything's getting really close right now, and unfortunately one of the things that happened when I got the geometry right was I lost the gib, and so I've got the gib out and I've sent it off to a friend of mine, Harold. He's going to put some turkite on the back of it for me. I'm not sure whether I'm going to leave it that way, but at least at this point it will give me the material to scrape it back in now that the geometry has changed. So what I'm doing right now is just pulling the knee back off. In the meantime, I had made up this little bracket here. Works nice It's going to be able to pick the knee up and balance it right. So that's working out good for me. And got to do a couple other things to the flat ways on the back. I've got to take some material out of the center so I don't have a full bearing contact across the whole back of the knee. And we're getting close right now, and I've got a few things left to do before the gib comes back, and then we should be ready to go on the knee. I've got the knee on its with the back of the knee pointing up. I've got a little fixture that I built, just kind of bolts onto the front where the y-axis crank handle goes, and I can hold it in this position or with the saddle pointing up as well. Anyways, one of the things that I needed to do as I get closer and closer to good geometry here, and before I finally fit the gib, is I need to relieve this section on the back of the knee so that there's only 4 bearing points. You know, they're large. This is slightly less than a third, and I'm just going to break these, take them down a couple of tenths. That's all I really want to do, just so that these 4 corners are the actual bearing surface, so we don't get any rocking. So I've got one side done now. That's relieved down just a couple of passes, one each way, hogging off quite a bit of metal. So I'm going to get the other side now. So now I'll just do it one more in the other direction there, and then we'll be done. One of the other things that I wanted to check, again, this is all prior to, I want this gib back, and I want to fit the gib one more time. So I'm just, now that I actually have the luxury of this surface plate, which allows me to put the knee up here and inspect it, and the cylindrical square against the large machinist square. And what I'm finding is this would be the flat way where the saddle would sit. So the knee is flipped on its back. The surface plate would represent the column, and over the 21 or 22 inches of the ways, I've got about 1 thou of tip in it, which meets the spec, and you know, in itself isn't an issue. And again, the luxury of having the surface plate, the square, the cylindrical square, and being able to check one another against each other, has really helped me. I scraped this long before I had this surface plate, and I'm pretty happy that I got it where I have it. But the one thing that's bothering me is the one thou is actually tipped down at the front. So as you'll be working on the Bridgeport, the front of the knee would be tipping down, which is, from what I've read and seen, that's the opposite of what you want. You actually want it to be proud at the front. So as tool pressure and wear and everything happens, it comes down. You don't want to start in this down position and then wear and tool pressure just takes you further away. So I'm going to use the surface plate, and now that I've broken the center of the flat ways on the back of the knee, I just have the 4 contact points. So I'm going to glue the surface plate up, check the back of the knee, see what it looks like, and start to work on taking material off. And I don't need to take much off because I'm only looking for 1 thou over 24 inches. So I'm going to take off at the back on the top of the knee, which should tip the knee back in a better orientation for long-term service.